Hello everyone, Pineaaronapple here with the ever-awaited Five Nights at Freddy's movie, brought to us by Blumhouse and series creator Scott Cawthon. At this point, I think Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF, needs no introduction. From the games to the books, or even this guy.
It's just a theory.
Don't you tell me how many calories I need, bitch!
You've probably heard of it. I've been a fan of the series since it started, when it became an embarrassing punching bag, and when it resurfaced into a more complex beast, where people became aware of the ups and downs as the original fans like myself aged, the games becoming popular as I was in high school. I know of its history in the social consciousness all too well. No one expected this movie to be grand, and then no one expected it to come out, as there were a lot of troubles with the production. But as proved by the Banana Splits movie and Willy's Wonderland that we'll have to look at someday, a movie like this is possible, and lo and behold, they did it. But did it amount to the height we expected? Or did it fall into the trappings of being an imperfect, over-complex, yet far too simple narrative that people on the internet start screaming at each other to prove they're correct about? Well, let's get into the movie and find out. We start the film as a quite shaken security guard attempts to escape Freddy's, but is captured and put into whatever this sword trap of a device is, and for the cold open of the film, this is a fantastic way to start off. It gives us a mystery, it's shot fabulously, and instead of giving us the animatronics in their full glory, keeps things simple. So, even though we don't get to see this guy's face be carved apart, as I believe this is a PG-13 movie, it does give us ample mystery to answer later, even if most who go watch the film can guess what's coming. On the movie being PG-13, while a lot could be done as an R-rated film, I understand that the target audience for this film is probably of a younger demographic than I, for better or for worse. We get some kick-ass creative credits that foreshadow, if not outright tell part of the story, and we meet Mike Schmidt, played by Josh Hutcherson, who is leaving to go to work, and we meet his sister, who is in his care, being Abby, played by Piper Rubio. You're immediately shown their loving yet distant relationship, and although it is expanded upon later, here is a perfect start to show us what's to come. At work, Mike and his co-worker have a deep conversation, setting up a future plot point, before he sees a man roughly accost a lonely boy, completely ignoring this poor ice cream worker and beating the ever-loving shit out of the guy, as the situation triggered his trauma. And for a PG movie, this tragedy of not only violence, but a trauma within his own mind is shown in brutal and haunting detail, as the truth of what he did, and how his life is turning out is described to him by Steve Raglan, a man played by totally not the psycho villain Matthew Lillard. A man with what looks like a framed participation award who seeks to help Mike get a job. But his options are limited to Freddy's, offering the job after reading his last name, although he initially doesn't take the job as he wouldn't have someone to look after his sister overnight. Or at least not easily. His sister was babysat by Mike's weird, unpaid friend Max, and we get the first look at Abby's drawings, a strange, but quite creative and heartfelt plot point, and giving us another look at their relationship. It's after this we see the significance of Mike's music and poster, as he watches while a mystery man kidnaps his brother Garrett, after Mike looks away for, 3 seconds. Game fans probably know exactly where this plot point goes, but to general audiences, I'm not sure if they'd assume the point of focusing on this as more than a part of Mike's character. At Abby's school, we see Jane, played by Mary Stuart Masterson, who seeks to get custody of Abby for money. And you pretty much immediately understand and hate her character. I was worried she would be a basic two-dimensional villain, but we do get to see a little more of her twisted side later, even if more could have been done with her before her satisfying end. We also meet my favourite character, Doug the lawyer.
I shouldn't be hearing any of this.
The doctor they are speaking with, who for some reason seems to be written like Abby's teacher or something, I don't know. It's a little weird. Anyway, she postures about how powerful images are to children and such, and I think this was a really good way to set up the future plot point. talking about how receptive children are to drawings and what they mean to them, and how that comes back for the finale. Out of desperation, Mike takes the Freddy's job and learns how to work the monitors and power. And from the office to the animatronics, I have to commend the film for the sheer amount of detail they put in. This could have been done so much lazier, but they really go at it. After an interesting security video, we see this creepy fucking balloon boy, and Mike gets a first look at the animatronics. And it's really great how the first proper time we see them is in this fashion, not just fully out. Mike falls asleep, dreaming of that day again, and the repetition we see is really effective, key details standing out, and that adds to what we learn later about how Mike takes medication, hoping every night that he might find a new detail as to who took his brother. It gives it an almost Groundhog Day feeling. In this dream, he sees the 5 spirits of the dead kids, each with a defining feature. And fuck man, this lead kid, the Golden Freddy one, real creep. I'm sure he's a nice person in real life, but throughout this film, very creepy. Mike goes back home and we catch up with Jane, who is in league with Max, trying to get Abby away from Mike for money. They plan to trash Freddy's to get him fired, and Doug gets some great lines before disappearing forever. Then the moment we were all waiting for.
What? What the fuck?
Abby and Mike have a decent, if uncomfortable, scene together, and he goes back, Foxy creepily stalking him while he sleeps, weeding him out as the spirit of him cuts him at the same time as the bot. And Mike wakes up to everything freaking out, and he heads outside to meet a cop who has just arrived, ready to grill him. This is Vanessa, played by Elizabeth Lale, who acts greatly, seeming sincere but still pretty awkward. She helps him with his gash, but clearly knows more than what she'll say, mentioning missing children. These two have pretty good acting chemistry together. It's now we get our first proper look at the animatronics as they perform for them, playing Talking in Your Sleep by the Romantics, a song that becomes their theme in this movie. A great song that could be thought of creepily in this context, but much like the animatronics, gets both sides, creepy and sincere. Speaking of the animatronics, while they can look or move a little awkward and don't get very creepy on their own, they're always rightly intimidating. And the pure detail and care that's gone into making them may not seem like much, but to hit such a perfect balance is fantastic. They stay till morning. She gives advice and they both leave, as Jeff, Kim and the boys plan to raid the place. They do so as they are stalked by the animatronics, the editing and shot composition giving a foreboding feeling, and it isn't long until they're taken out. This fantastic shot of Chica is noteworthy too, shows that some serious planning went into this. Chica and the cupcake get one, causing the big guy to freak in hilarious fashion, as seen by Jeff. Bonnie gets the big guy and Jeff gets chased around, in fantastic fashion. We even get the jump scare sound from the original games, even if the Foxy bit at the end is a little hodgepodge. Kim comes in to find a reference to one of FNAF's earliest urban legends, and is killed, in what starts as a creepy way, but unfortunately the clear CGI makes it laughably disappointing. Abby and Mike have a well-done interaction, and Vanessa comes around, Mike making what we can infer perfectly clear, and re-watching this scene, watching Vanessa's face, holy shit, the character detail here and the acting, while just as depressing as uncomfortable as the screen needs, is marvellously done. Unable to find the very dead Max, Mike is forced to take Abby to Freddy's, and after both he and Abby contradict what others have told them barely hours ago, find themselves face to face with the animatronics, who overall in the film are played perfectly. Creepy but understood, vulnerable but hate-filled, it's a duality that is fulfilled greatly, between the tortured children they start as and the hate-filled spirits that they become, making the scenes where they react with Abby both heartwarming and horribly tense. The pictures are brought up again, and understandably Mike says, "Fuck this," and takes them home, then noticing that Abby's drawings are of the kids he saw in his dreams, connecting them to the animatronics. Mike and Abby have a chat, confirming what we know about the ghosts, and we see a drawing that Abby made of Garrett's kidnapping. This scene between them is pretty good, and he asks her to ask the ghosts about the kidnapper. We also learn that the animatronics have a fixation of a yellow rabbit, and we see Vanessa staring at a picture of it as we go to Freddy's. Once again, showing the duality of the situation, we get a happy, fun, yet uncomfortable fort-building montage. While in the back, Mike and Vanessa find another suit of a small girl. One I can only assume is a reference either to the anthology books or the Silver Eyes trilogy. And here we get our first look at the spring locks. This isn't how I imagined them, and I feel like they could have been used better later on, but this scene is effective in showing the danger they pose. Vanessa once again warns Mike, wanting him to get Abby out of here, and let his investigation go. Abby is hurt by the guitar, and Vanessa tears into Mike again, promising to shoot him if Abby gets mixed up in this again. Unfortunately, that means getting Jane to babysit, causing Abby to act out, and against Vanessa's warnings, Mike picks up more pills.
What an asshole.
Mike goes back to Dreamland in a pretty visceral scene, and is manipulated by the Golden Freddy kid, who's credited as Blonde Boy, so we'll just call him that, into giving them Abby in return for more dreams like this one. A decision he quickly regrets making, and in retaliation for that, the animatronics stick him in the Freddy death chair. But he succeeds in escaping where the last guard failed, but does find the corpses of the vandals from before. He attempts to escape, but only does so narrowly before Foxy can gut him. Back at home, Jane is murked by Golden Freddy, while Blonde Boy lures Abby back to Freddy's in a taxi with a familiar YouTube face.
Why do I always get the weirdos?
In a nondescript police warehouse, Vanessa fixes up Mike, and in this well-done scene, Mike drags some explanations out of Vanessa, who admits she knows everything, and the killer is her father, William Afton, who, once we see the toy plane again, we know is the one that took Garrett. We also get the info that the animatronic's obsession with Abby is them wanting to make her like them, and we see her get lured in. Vanessa gets a good monologue and tells Mike that she tried to warn him away. He goes to save Abby, but Vanessa refuses to go, saying that her father is likely to turn up and she can't fight him. Abby is being lured backstage by Chica, and Mike breaks in after her, delivering us the most overtly scary that Freddy has been with this fucking look, certainly shocking me. Thinking about it, Freddy may be the main animatronic, but Foxy and Chica have seemingly gotten most of the terror in this movie. It's strange. I would have liked more overt creepiness like this, but what we've gotten isn't bad. Just a little lacking. Mike knocks them out with some water and electricity, only just making it to save Abby as Chica tries to shove her into the doll suit. They have a nice heart-to-heart before the cupcake starts wrecking Mike's shit, and he sends her away to hide, giving us a great intense scene as she hides from Foxy, very reminiscent of the Silver Eyes. Mike makes it to the main floor after dealing with the cupcake, only to be met by Springtrap. And man, this fucking rocks. Not only is Matthew Lillard's performance as Afton fantastic, but the design of the suit and the way the fight is shot does wonders. Vanessa appears and saves Abby, William doing the Ghostface knife clean, and Vanessa then shooting him as he demasks and stabs her. Once again, like Vanessa before, getting a good performance just from facial expressions. While this is going on, Abby draws a new picture to replace the one we saw earlier, turning the yellow rabbit from a friend to a monster. And once Mike repowers the building, the drawing gives the children the power to shake William's control. This is the big finale, and we see in horrific detail the spring locks force themselves into William after the cupcake noshes on him. On one hand, I'm glad to see how violent and disturbing the spring locks are shot, but I would have liked a little more here. It just kinda looks like he got stabbed in the ribs, but in the games and books it's implied and shown to be body-wide, being implanted with robotics and slowly rotting as he's forced to stay alive by his own will and the will of the spirits. So I hope that that's expanded upon in the sequel, but here I feel like it could have been done a little better, even if what we got is pretty good. He puts the helmet back on for some reason and gets a good one-liner before being awkwardly dragged away. the 3 remaining humans hopefully to go to a hospital. Mike and Abby get their happy ending and visit Vanessa, who did get to the hospital but for now is comatose, and Mike admits that although she was a sketchy bitch, he wants her to get better, for the help she gave. They think about heading back to Freddy's, and we see one final scene of the pizza place, with the blonde boy, much like in the other versions of the story, keeping the mangled spring trap trapped and alive in agony, leaving the movie off in a great and gruesome visual. And that's how the film leaves off, although we do get a nice bonus clip with the cabbie and balloon boy. Something to certainly be commended in this film is the score. The licensed songs, such as Talking in Your Sleep or the Living Tombstones FNAF song in the credits, were excellent choices. And the original score throughout the film was pretty good too, even if no track stood out to me without giving the soundtrack a listen. There were no points I found myself being removed from a scene because of the dodgy music choice. Now, of course, with any movie based on a video game, we do have to ask, how well did it adapt the source material? And when making the story its own, did it service the film instead of acting as a difference for difference sake? Now, of course, due to the way the games communicate their story, especially the early installments, there are a lot of liberties to be taken to make it a cohesive film, and I feel the bits they cherry-picked worked pretty well. They seemed to take the basis of the first game, but took into account the pieces of the story that were implanted further in the series, like the names of the characters, Mike, William and Vanessa, one from the first, one from later in the timeline, and one from the latest games. Some of those elements were changed. There were no mentions of Henry or Charlotte, no puppet and no sister location, but it seems all changes were made in service of telling a good story and cohesive narrative, doing their best to mould the vague timeline of the games to an admittedly not 100% clear-cut timeline, but gives us enough core to the characters that any unexplained mysteries either didn't need to be answered to tell the story, like Remnant, but gives us enough to leave more to a sequel than the same movie again, just with different characters. And I do hope we get a few sequels from this. Already it seems like it's on the table with how much money it's made, and there is a lot to pull from. Elements of FNAF 2, 3, 4, Sister Location and further ahead would be great as a sequel. Although with how jumpy the timeline is in the games, the sequel will have to be a little more stitched together than a movie for each game. Overall, while things could have been a little better and different decisions could have been made, this was far better than what I was expecting, and simultaneously did justice to the original source while creating something new. I'd recommend this even if you weren't a fan, but if you are a fan of the games and universe like I am, I think you'll get a lot out of this too. I understand the target audience was a key factor, but I still think that this deserved a higher rating to really get the shock and horror across better. And that would still allow you to ace the more innocent side of the tone that this movie balances well. I just wish the other side could have been explored more, but once again, I understand why they didn't, as many children will be forcing their parents to go take them to see this film. At the end of the day, I have to give this film a number, and given how much I enjoyed it, I have no qualms giving the Five Nights at Freddy's movie an 8 out of 10. And on the rewatchability scale, I'd give it a keepsake, as I unexpectedly got more out of the performances and smaller details on rewatch. Thank you everybody for watching my review of the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. That's right, I'm back, bitches! Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you wish, tell me if there's something you want me to review or make a video on, and consider subscribing to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.